حي على الفلاح.
Is there a God? So the first thing that we would like to ask is, what is a God? I'm not asking you what is the God. I'm asking, what is a God? A God is something that people believe can give them what they want and what they need. Now, often in religions, people have different gods for different things. You will find that they have a particular God that if you're fighting a war and you want to win, then you worship the God of war. Or for example, if you want the rain to fall, they worship the rain god. If they someone to love them, they might worship the god or goddess of love. And usually there is a set of rituals, a set of functions. It may be prayer, it may be sacrifice, it may be giving offerings. Now let's go back and answer our question. Is there a God? No one could deny that there's not only a God, there are actually probably countless millions of gods. Because whatever people put their faith in and their hope in and their trust in, whatever people believe is going to give them what they want and what they need, that's their God. So everybody has a God. Not only idols and saints and prophets and so on and so forth. No, they also put their faith and trust in ideologies, communism, science. So these also can be gods. And they imagine that these are the things that will make them successful in life. So it's very important to understand this. People have gods. Most people have many gods. So the real question we need to be asking today is not, is there a God? But rather, out of all the things that people worship and put their faith in and put their trust in, are any of these things truly worthy of it? In other words, are they really capable of giving people what they want and what they need? You know, it's very beautiful. The Quran really appeals to something that all human beings have it. Now, not every human being is a philosopher. Not every human being is a theologian. Not every human being is capable of becoming a mystic and an ascetic in order to become enlightened with spiritual truths, because most human beings have to just get on with their life in order to survive. However, so we find that the Quran, which is a book for everybody, it's a book for the philosopher, the theologian, the mystic, and the ordinary people. Because this is a book that we believe that is from the creator of ordinary people, which appeals to ordinary people. And what is common to humanity? Actually, something we call common sense. Not logic, because logic is a systemized way of thinking. So we don't want to call it logic. We could call it reason, but even reason is not necessarily what we're talking about. What we are talking about is something even more fundamental, and that is common sense. Every single human being agrees about those things. The only people who don't agree with it are people who are either insane or perhaps philosophers. They don't agree with these things because they're just, contentious. They think it's their job to argue about everything. Let me give you an example. Isn't it a universal truth that every human being agrees about, that part of something is less than the whole? Isn't that a universal truth? Let me give you another example of a universal truth. You don't get something coming from nothing. True or not? Have you ever, in the totality of human experience, heard of something spontaneously appearing out of nothing? No. That goes against common sense. That wherever we are, as long as we call ourselves human, we experience these things and we can agree about these things. Now, I want to make an important point. One of the things that human beings actually don't agree about are things to do with ethics and morals. How we should behave, the things that we shouldn't and shouldn't do. So for one society to say, oh, this society is backward and primitive, or this religion is wrong because it practices polygamy, whereas the right way to behave is monogamy, actually, this is not a valid means through which and by which to judge anyone or anything. Because upon what basis is monogamy right and polygamy wrong? But, apart from some basic moral structures, actually human beings have pretty diverse ideas about what should be the norms of a society. And I'm only saying that because you know what? What you will find is that most people who criticize Islam don't criticize Islam on the basis of the fundamentals of what our religion teaches. And the reason simply is that the fundamentals of what Islam teaches are so firmly rooted in reason and common sense that it is really virtually impossible to produce any type of effective argument against it. Let's use our common sense and let's look at some of the stories and the examples that the Quran uses, and just let's see how very much based upon common sense these things are. So let's take the first category of people. The first category of people are those people who say, I believe there is not a God, that there is not a creator, that there is no being that has brought this universe into existence. There were people in the time of the Prophet who made claims like that, and there are people today who make claims like that. Similarly, you will find that all cultures, even the most primitive cultures, so-called primitive cultures, have this concept of a transcendent being that has created the universe and has brought it into existence. This idea of this transcendent creator is universal in human culture, and the reason is because it is so fundamentally rooted in common sense. The Quran, for example, poses a series of rhetorical questions. For example, the Quran says, did it come from nothing, this universe? There is nothing in the totality of human experience that leads us to believe that you get something coming from nothing, or that you get order spontaneously arising out of chaos. That's why if you were walking in the desert in Saudi Arabia and you found a mobile phone, what are the essential components of a mobile phone? The essential components of a mobile phone are sand and oil. But no one picks up a mobile phone in the desert and says, look, a product of billions of years of chance and coincidence. Yeah? The oil bubbled, yeah? The wind blew, the sun shone, the lightning struck, the camel trod, and after billions and billions of years of these things happening, by an amazing coincidence, this mobile phone formed itself, and I pressed it and, oh, hi, Mum. What a chance and coincidence. You see how ridiculous it is. Even something more simple, a piece of pottery, which is clay. When an archaeologist finds a little piece of pottery, he doesn't say, oh my gosh, chance and coincidence. He knows someone has made this. Someone has heated it, someone has treated it, someone has painted it. And in fact, this archaeologist could tell you so many things about that civilization from this one piece of pottery. That is why the Quran keeps asking us, look at the alternation of the night and the day. Look at the sun, the moon, the stars, the winds, the ships in which you sail, the animals that you ride and that you eat. Look at yourselves. Travel through the earth. See how Allah brought about the creation. In all of these things are signs for those who are wise and for those who understand, they point us to one very, very obvious conclusion. That this incredibly organized, systemized universe and world in which we live, with so many intricately coordinated mechanisms, we find this symbiosis. We find how one thing relies and depends upon another, and we can think of so many examples. We look at our earth. Is it just coincidence that the earth is at an optimal distance from the sun? If we were in astronomical terms, and I'm not talking about 3 or 4 miles, okay? In astronomical terms, by the way, our galaxy is 100,000 light years across. That means if you lived for 100,000 years and you traveled non-stop at the speed of light, that's how long it would take to cross our galaxy. And our galaxy is one of millions in the known universe, which is, I think, 10 billion light years across. Imagine if you put that into terms, how precise. I don't think we could think of a mechanism in existence built by human beings that has the precision of the distance of the earth being from the sun. If we were much closer to the sun, then our planet would be too hot. If it was much further, it would be too cold. The size of the earth also is important. If the earth was much bigger, the gravitational forces would be too overwhelming. If it was much smaller, there would be not enough gravity. This is another point. How about the combination of gases on our planet? Not only oxygen, vital for the existence of life, but also carbon dioxide and nitrogen. It is this combination of gases. Pure oxygen is poisonous. If you breathe just pure oxygen for long enough, it will poison you. You need a balance of gases. We need carbon dioxide. Plants need carbon dioxide. Nitrogen is important for fertilizing the soil. Ozone, another gas. The ozone layer actually filters out the harmful rays of the sun's radiation. Look at these optimal conditions. The earth spins on its axis once every 24 hours. Imagine the earth was going really, 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 really slow. What would happen? One part of the earth's surface would be superheated, another part of the earth's surface would be supercooled. How water has an incredible quality. If water did not have the quality that it did, life would not exist. So what we find is a super precise mechanism. It is therefore only common sense that when we look around us and we see these things, that we conclude there must be some intelligence, some power behind this. And this power must be very powerful, very wise, very intelligent. And it's also common sense to realize that this being cannot be like the creation. Because if this being was like the creation, then that being would not be the creator. So it makes sense that the creator is infinite, eternal, without beginning, without end. That the creator is self-sufficient, that the creator is not like anything in this universe. If there were different creators, in fact, what we would find would be chaos and disunity, not this type of consistent precision throughout our universe. And this is why really it makes so much sense to believe. It's common sense to believe that there is one God, that there is one wise, powerful, intelligent creator that is unique, who has brought this universe into existence. You see, the Quran says that in fact, the real problem with the human beings is not that they don't believe in God. Most human beings believe in God, and they believe that there is one God, meaning they believe that there is one creator. But what they do is they actually give to the created things some of the powers or the knowledge that in fact only rightly belongs to God. So they attribute to the creation, they imagine that some things in the creation have powers that only God has. Or sometimes they also attribute to God some of the deficiencies and the shortcomings in the creation. And the reason they do this is because they speak about God without knowledge. They invent things because actually the truth is that what we can know about God through reason and common sense is in fact severely limited. Now some people, when they are faced with that limitation, they've come up with different ideas. For example, idol worshippers. Most intelligent idol worshippers don't actually claim that the idol itself that they are worshipping actually has any power. They believe that somehow these idols represent spirits or powers or beings that can be intermediaries or intercessors between them and God. And they give an example. They say, for example, you can't just talk straight to God. You have to go through those people who are close to God. The problem with this is that immediately these people have presumed that God suffers from the limitations and the deficiencies of the human beings. He has 24 hours in a day. He's limited. You see, but God is not limited like that. Allah, God, the Creator, who has created this whole universe, can hear the complaint of every single human being. And not only that, an incredible thing, if every single human being complained to God all at the same time, God could hear every voice of every human being, and God could give every one of them what they wanted, and that would be easy for God. Let's think about what that means in respect to those people who pray to saints and prophets. There are even some Muslims who do this. Are you telling me that Saint Anthony can hear 1 million voices all at the same time? If you're telling me that he can, then actually you are not describing a human being anymore. You are saying that he has powers that are actually divine powers. You are now beginning to make that person equal with Allah, with God. Whether it's the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Prophet Isa, or Saint Anthony. And this is how people either they imagine that God, Allah, is limited, and they've given to human beings exaggerations. And the Quran deals with this. A beautiful story is the story of Abraham. He is well known for smashing idols. You see, from a young age, he was brought up, his father used to make idols. He's brought up realizing that what is this? And then he noticed the people, they're worshipping the sun, the moon, and the stars, but he's looking, he's seeing, well, the stars are there, and then the moon comes out and outshines the stars, and then the sun comes and that outshines everything, and then the sun sets. And why are we worshipping things that obviously are controlled by something else? It doesn't make any sense to worship them. They don't have the power. They're under the power of something else. Why should we worship these things that come and go and temporary? Because if they can go, that means they can let us down. So one day he's determined. He says to his people, I'm going to show you. I'm going to prove to you that your worship of the idols is false. So when his people have gone, it's their festivity, he doesn't want to participate in it because he doesn't want to be involved in their idol worship at all. So he says to them, I'm sick. Meaning, actually, he was sick of what they're doing. So, when they were doing this, he went into the temple and he smashed all the idols except the chief idol. Now, when the people came back, they were outraged. Some people said, you remember that young man, Abraham? He was saying that he was going to prove our idols are false. So the king, he brings Abraham in front of the people. He says, Abraham, did you do this to our gods? So Abraham says, ask the big one. So then they look at each other and they say to Abraham, Abraham, you know that our gods can't talk to us. He says, why do you worship something that can bring you no benefit and no harm? This idol can't even protect itself. How is it going to protect you? Isn't that common sense? Okay, let's look at another category. The other category is the category of the man God. There are many religions throughout history who have believed that some human being is actually God. Now, the example the Quran uses is the example of Christianity. There are Christians who claim that Jesus is Allah. That he is not just the son of Allah, but he is Allah. He is one and part and the same as God. And the Quran appeals to such beautiful, commonsensical things. The Quran says, didn't Jesus and his mother, didn't he walk on the earth and breathe air and eat food? And they went to the marketplace, they needed to buy things, they went to the marketplace. See how Allah makes things clear. And what does that mean anyway? To say that something is man and God at the same time. It's an impossibility. By definition, God is infinite, self-sufficient, and eternal. Human beings, by definition, are temporary, mortal, and needy. How can something be eternal and temporary both at the same time? How can something be self-sufficient and needy both at the same time? How can something be eternal and finite both at the same time? Now, the whole idea that God becomes a man. I'll tell you something. I say, you're telling me that on the day of judgment, I stand in front of God and God says to me, why didn't you believe that I became a man? I will say, how could I believe that you, Allah, the eternal self-sufficient creator of the heavens and the earth, was a temporary mortal needy man? How could I believe such a thing? You are far above that. If God then puts me in hell forever, I will never feel for one moment of eternity that God has treated me fairly or justly. There's one other thing I want us to think about, and I like to give this as an example. Modern science has made us appreciate something really remarkable, and that remarkable thing is exactly how minute we are. Actually, 1,400 years ago, the Prophet Muhammad, was also, in reflection of the words of the Quran, reminding us of our humble origins. The Quran reminds us that you came from a sperm drop, a despised fluid. The Quran reminds us of our base origins. The Prophet Muhammad even mentioned that the universe, compared to the kursi, his pedestal, extends over the heavens and the earth. How? The Prophet Muhammad said, the universe is like a ring in the desert compared to the kursi, a ring in the desert. Think about that. How big is the desert and how small is the ring? And the kursi compared to the arsh, and the arsh means the throne of God, is also like a ring in the desert. Now some people say, no, we don't believe that Jesus is God. We believe he's the Son of God. But that's not any better. That's still insulting God. That's still saying that the child of God, the Son of God, is what? Some insignificant creature? And I don't mean here to belittle Jesus, alayhi salam. We are the creation of God. We are the slaves of God. The only difference is, what sort of person are you? Do you believe in God? Do you insult God? Or do you honor God? If you do that, God loves you. If you don't, he doesn't. It's that simple. Most Christians will actually say, no. That Jesus literally is the actual, literally begotten Son of God. So we say, well, what do you mean? Again, no. We are creatures of God. We are the servants of God. The next category I want to deal with is race, tribalism. This is a false god as well. Becomes a religion. Now the final thing is the biggest false god of all. The most worshipped one, and that is the god of materialism. The idea that science, power, wealth, technology, these are the things that are going to make you successful in life. Does wealth equal happiness? The claim that we can all enjoy our lives materialistically is a lie. And the claim that it is the way to success is a falsehood. The idea that in money and wealth and science and technology is the true answer to all of our problems. Woe be, the Prophet said, to the worshipper of the dinar and the dirham, because you can worship money just like anything else. The final thing, when human beings are in a condition of extreme distress, and the Quran gives the example of a boat that is on the sea, and imagine the waves are crashing over this boat like the roof of a tent. This is how the waves are, this storm. And the people know that they are about to be doomed. The technology is not going to save them. The boat itself is breaking up. Do people think their money is going to help them now? All those gods, all those things that they put their faith and they put their hope and they put their trust in, they forget them. And what do? They start calling upon that one being that they know instinctively. They know, it is knowledge from inside themselves, that there is one being. This being is not anything in this universe. No, this being has power over everything in the universe. But the one they are calling to is truly Allah, is truly the Creator, the one who has power over all things. And then Allah asks them, and you know that that's true. Every human being, they know in their heart that that is true. Then why? In that moment when you have complete faith in Allah, why then do you put your faith and your trust and your hope in other than Allah? Why do you worship other than your Lord? Because ultimately all those things, they are false. Because at that moment, the one that you rely upon and hope in completely and utterly is Allah, the Creator alone. This is the beautiful, simple message of Islam. This is the beautiful, simple message of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, of Jesus, the true message of Jesus alayhi salam, of Musa, the true message of Moses alayhi salam, of Abraham alayhi salam. This is the true message of all the prophets, that we should abandon the worship, the false gods, and in fact we should worship the one true God, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.